My son-in-law thought I was nothing more than an aging man who barely noticed the world around him. He'd smile politely at dinner, speak respectfully in front of my daughter, and play the part of a caring husband. But late at night, when the house was quiet, he moved differently, like a shadow looking for something I had no right to touch. That night, I was lying in bed, lights out, feigning sleep. I heard the faintest sound of metal against wood, the unmistakable whisper of my dresser drawer sliding open. My breathing stayed slow and even, but my heart began a steady drumbeat in my chest. He thought he was alone. He thought I was helpless. But in the darkness, I watched the faint shape of his figure freeze, his posture shifting from confidence to shock. The moment his eyes fell on what was inside that drawer, the color must have drained from his face, if the way he staggered back was any indication. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply allowed the smallest smile to form in the shadows, unseen by him. He had no idea that every moment was already setting the stage for his undoing. The next evening, over a quiet dinner, the conversation was warm and unremarkable until Elias broke the rhythm. "So, Victor, that safe upstairs, what kind of lock does it have?" I paused, my fork halfway in my mouth. Across the table, my daughter, Clara, nearly choked on her water. "Elias, what kind of question is that?" But his eyes never left mine. There was a glint there, something too sharp, too deliberate. It wasn't curiosity, it was calculation. "Just thinking about home security," he said, his smile stretched into something meant to look casual. "You know, with all the break-ins in the area lately." "What break-ins?" I asked. I'd lived in Brookford Heights for over a decade, and the most recent disturbance had been Mrs. Wallace's dog wandering into a neighbor's yard. He waved a hand like it didn't matter. "Oh, you probably haven't heard. They keep it quiet to avoid panic." Then he leaned in, elbows on my table, the way a salesman leans toward a closing deal. But a man living alone in a house this size must have some serious security measures. Clara shifted in her chair. "Dad's always been careful about locking up." "Right," Elias said, "but what about insurance? I mean, if, God forbid, something happened to you, wouldn't Clara need to know where you keep everything important?" The air around us seemed to tighten. His pupils widened just a fraction when he mentioned my death. His fingers tapped the table in a rhythm that told me he was impatient for answers. I gave him a polite, measured smile. "Everything is in order. Clara knows what she needs to know." What I didn't say was, "Not yet, Elias." And "Not you." Elias tilted his head, feigning innocence. "But does she know about the key?" Clara frowned. "What key?" His smile widened. "The one in your father's bedroom drawer." My fork stopped just short of my plate. "And how would you know about any key in my bedroom?" The sharpness of my tone surprised even me. For the briefest moment, his expression faltered. Something cold, calculating flashing across his features before he slipped the mask back on. "Oh, last week when I had that migraine, you told me to grab aspirin from the bathroom cabinet. I must have opened the wrong drawer by accident. Didn't mean to intrude." Clara nodded quickly. "I remember. You were miserable that day." But I remembered that evening differently. He'd been upstairs for half an hour, not a few minutes. And in my house, aspirin had lived in the same cabinet for 20 years. "It's always been in the bathroom," I said quietly. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Must have been really out of it. The rest of the meal limped along, but he kept circling back, probing about my bank accounts, who had keys to the house, my routines. Every question felt like a finger pressing against a bruise. When dinner ended, Clara jumped to clear the dishes. "You cooked, Dad. I'll clean." "It's fine," I said, stacking plates. I needed the grounding rhythm of washing dishes tonight more than ever. "Come on, love," Elias said to her. "Let your dad handle it. We should rest." They disappeared upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, my hands working automatically, wash, rinse, dry, while my mind pieced together every red flag I'd ignored. The pattern was becoming clear. By the time I hung the last dish towel, my mind was running a mile a minute. Elias's interest in my finances, his knowledge of the key, his casual talk about what might happen if something happened to me. It was no longer innocent. It was deliberate. I climbed the stairs slowly, replaying every odd moment from the past 3 weeks. That's when I saw it. My bedroom door. It was ajar, just 2 inches, but enough for a ribbon of darkness to spill into the hallway. I never left it open. Never. Decades of habit made me close it every night without fail. Clara and Elias were staying in the guest room down the hall. They had no reason to be in my bedroom. I stood there on the landing, holding my breath, listening. The house gave its usual sighs, the faint creak of settling wood, the whisper of the wind against the eaves, but no movement from their room. Slowly, I pushed my door open. The hinges were silent, well-oiled, but crossing that threshold felt like stepping into a crime scene. At first glance, nothing was amiss. The bed was neatly made. My reading glasses sat on the nightstand exactly where I'd left them. The lamp's angle was unchanged. But then my eyes caught the details, small, precise disruptions that screamed intrusion. The closet door hung open by 4 inches. My dresser drawers weren't perfectly flush. And in the second drawer from the top, a corner of a manila folder peeked out like a tongue between teeth. Someone had been here. Someone had gone looking. I pulled the drawer open fully. The contents had been handled with a kind of hurried care, just enough to keep up appearances, but not enough to fool me. Insurance papers were jumbled with bank statements. My will, usually tucked in the far back, sat disturbingly close to the front. And the most telling detail, the tiny brass key I kept taped under the lip of the drawer, was gone. I checked twice, running my fingers along the smooth underside where the tape residue still clung. Nothing. That key was a manual override to my safe. The same safe Elias had asked about at dinner, his voice wrapped in false curiosity. A cold, steady anger began to take root in my chest. This wasn't clumsy snooping. This was surgical, targeted, intentional. Someone had come here looking for specific things. I crossed the closet where the safe sat, bolted to the wall. The digital lock screen glowed softly, ready for input, but it didn't matter. Without the key, it was vulnerable to anyone who knew where to look. How many times had Elias been in this room while I was distracted downstairs? How many nights had he stood exactly where I was standing now, cataloging my belongings like items on a store shelf? This was more than theft. This was violation, personal and invasive in a way that left the air feeling thinner, the walls less protective. But Elias had made one grave mistake. He thought I wouldn't notice. I closed the drawer slowly, careful to leave it exactly as I'd found it. If Elias believed his little break-in had gone undetected, he'd keep moving forward with whatever plan he was hatching. And that was exactly what I wanted. Standing in my own bedroom, surrounded by things I collected over a lifetime, I felt something change inside me. The years of being cautious, observant, deliberate, they weren't just habits anymore. They were tools, and I was going to use them. This wasn't about helping with bills or a temporary setback. No, this was about calculated theft, mapped out with patience and precision. Elias had studied me, my routines, my vulnerabilities. He decided I was just another oblivious old man, easy to manipulate. He was wrong. I switched off the bedroom light and moved through my nighttime routine exactly as I always did, performing for an audience I couldn't see. Did he know I'd been in here? Was he listening for changes in my voice, my footsteps? As I pulled back the covers, one thought crystallized. Tomorrow, I'd start gathering evidence. Tonight, I'd let him believe I was still in the dark. Sleep wouldn't come easily. Every small noise set my nerves on edge. The creak of a beam, the wind brushing past the windows, the faint hum of the refrigerator 2 floors below. And then, just before midnight, I heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, moving across the living room floor. I stayed perfectly still, controlling my breathing, every muscle taut. The steps moved toward the front of the house, then stopped. A faint click followed, the sound of a phone call being answered. "Yeah, it's me." Elias's voice drifted up, low and urgent. Everyone's asleep. The old house's ductwork carried sound in strange ways. I eased toward the heating vent near my bed, careful not to make the floor creak. His voice became clearer. The old man's definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, everything. We're talking serious money here. My blood ran cold. We're talking. He wasn't working alone. Tomorrow night's perfect, he continued. Clara's at her book club from 7 to 9. Gives us all the time we need. I reached for my phone, my hand trembling, and opened the voice recorder. If he wanted to confess his plan, I'd let him, and I'd keep every word. I've already got the safe key, he said. Grabbed it earlier. He keeps everything in there, cash, jewelry, more bank info. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped even lower. I can't wait any longer. My gambling debts are going away, and these guys, they're not patient. So that was it. This wasn't just greed. It was desperation. Dangerous desperation. Trust me, he said. By Thursday, we'll be gone. I'll tell her we got a job, offer out of state. We'll disappear before he even notices. I stopped the recording and sat there in the dark, my pulse hammering. Elias thought the trap was set for me. He had no idea I'd just set one for him. Lying in the dark. The recording still open on my phone. I couldn't stop thinking about how this all began. It was 3 weeks ago, an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was halfway through the newspaper, my coffee cooling beside me, when my phone rang. Seeing Clara's name always brought a smile, but the voice that greeted me was thin, strained. Dad, I know it's early, but I need to ask you something. I could hear her holding back tears. What is it? It's Elias. He lost his job last month. We've been trying to manage, but we're 3 months behind on the mortgage. Could we maybe stay with you for a little while, just until he finds something new? The relief in her voice when I said yes was almost painful to hear. My daughter, 32 years old, proud and independent, had been cornered into asking for help. Of course I'd take them in. Of course I'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. They arrived 3 days later with a rented truck that seemed far too full for a temporary stay. Clara hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you," over and over. Elias's greeting was different. A brisk handshake, polite words, but his eyes roamed the house like a buyer at an auction. "Nice place," he'd said, as if assessing the market value. At the time, I thought it was harmless curiosity. Now I knew better. That first look around my living room wasn't appreciation. It was inventory, and I had just given him the perfect vantage point to study me up close. The first week passed quietly enough. I cleared space in the guest room closet, shifted my routines to fit 3 people into a house built for 1, and tried to make them feel at home. Clara settled easily. She knew where everything was, knew my habits. But Elias was curious in a way that didn't sit right. He asked about my neighborhood, which neighbors were home during the day. Did we have a neighborhood watch? What time the mail came? He asked about my banking. Did I prefer online transfers or in-person visits? Did I keep cash in the house? Where did I store important papers? All perfectly innocent on the surface. The sort of small talk you might make when adjusting to a new place. But in hindsight, they weren't questions at all. They were reconnaissance. One morning, he offered to drive me to the bank. "Save you the trip," he'd said. "I need to update my address with unemployment anyway." At the teller window, he lingered close enough to see the transaction, asking offhand about my account types and whether I had a safety deposit box. I told myself he was just being chatty. I told myself Clara loved him, and if she trusted him, I should too. But trust is a dangerous thing when you give it to someone who sees it as an opening. The phone calls were the first real clue, though I didn't recognize it at the time. Elias's phone seemed to ring constantly. Sometimes he'd step out onto the porch, other times into the garage, his voice dropping low enough that even curious ears couldn't catch the words. When he came back inside, his mood would be different, shoulders tense, jaw set, pacing the room like a caged animal. If Clara noticed, she didn't show it. Mail started arriving with his name on it. Thick envelopes from credit card companies and finance agencies. Clara said they were just updating addresses after the move. I wanted to believe her, but the rhythm was off. These weren't the polite letters of ordinary business. These were the kind of envelopes that carried red ink warnings, deadlines, and threats. Clara trusted him completely. She believed the job search was going as he said. that the money troubles were just temporary. She had no idea that the man she loved was being hunted by the consequences of his own choices. Looking back, I should have known. Years as an insurance investigator had taught me the look of someone cornered, and Elias had it in spades. But at the time, I told myself he was just under stress from losing his job. I told myself a son-in-law deserves the benefit of the doubt. Now, with his voice captured on my phone, detailing exactly how he planned to rob me, I knew the truth, and the truth was uglier than I'd imagined. I woke at dawn, though I'd barely slept. The recording on my phone felt like a weapon, one I'd keep close until I was ready to use it. At 6:30 sharp, I went through my usual morning ritual. Coffee, eggs, toast. I wanted the day to look so ordinary that Elias wouldn't suspect a thing. Clara wandered in wearing her robe, hair still tousled from sleep. "Morning, Dad," she said, kissing my cheek. "Thanks again for letting us stay here." Elias arrived 20 minutes later, looking fresh and confident, like a man with a plan. "Beautiful day," he said easily as he sat down. "What's on the agenda?" "Oh, just a few errands," I said, pouring him coffee. His gaze sharpened. "What kind of errands?" "Nothing much. Hardware store, maybe the bank." A faint twitch near his left eye told me he'd heard exactly what I wanted him to hear. Clara laughed. "Dad's old-fashioned. He likes checking his accounts in person." Careful is a word. I corrected, holding his gaze. He nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. You never know these days, especially for someone your age." The condescension was deliberate, just like the rest of his performance. He was trying to gauge how vulnerable I might be. I sipped my coffee and let him think I'd swallowed the bait. If he wanted to see me as an easy mark, I'd let him. For now, after breakfast, Elias claimed he had job calls to make. Clara disappeared into the guest room to sort through boxes. I told them I'd be running errands. The moment I backed the car out of the driveway, I knew he was watching. I could picture him upstairs at the window, confirming my absence. He probably imagined the key still sitting in the same spot he'd found it before, tucked under the lip of my dresser drawer. But at 5 a.m., before either of them stirred, I had already moved it, sliding it deep into the kitchen junk drawer, hidden beneath a mess of rubber bands, paper clips, and old batteries. If Elias went through my bedroom again, he'd find nothing. But I didn't just want to deny him the key. I wanted to catch him in the act. And for that, I needed something that would leave no room for doubt. At the hardware store, I wandered through the aisles until inspiration struck, not in the security section, but in the party supplies. A small confetti cannon, spring-loaded, meant for celebrations. Cheap, harmless, and perfect. I added a bag of ultrafine glitter, gold and silver, the kind that clings to everything and never quite washes away. If Elias wanted to steal from me, I'd make sure he looked the part. By the time I returned home, I had the makings of a trap that would leave him both humiliated and unmistakably guilty. He thought I was prey, but I was already building the snare. The note on the kitchen counter said Clara and Elias had gone grocery shopping. Perfect. I had 3 hours. In the basement workshop, I dismantled the confetti cannon. The mechanism was laughably simple, a spring-loaded plunger that would fire the contents when pressed just right. I swapped out the paper streamers for my glitter mixture, making sure there was enough to coat a person head to toe without causing harm. The calibration was key. Too sensitive, and the drawer might trigger from a casual bump. Too firm, and he might grab what he came for without setting it off. I tested with a wooden spoon, adjusting until the slightest reach toward the back would unleash the sparkling storm. Next came the bait. I placed an old luggage key near the front of the drawer, just similar enough in size and shape to pass for the real one. In a hurry, under the adrenaline of a robbery, Elias would grab it without thinking. The cannon sat hidden beneath a few old photographs and loose buttons, normal clutter to disguise the mechanism. To the untrained eye, it was just another drawer in an old man's bedroom. But to the wrong hands, it was a trigger. By the time their car pulled back into the driveway, the trap was ready. Elias thought tonight would be his chance to outsmart me. Instead, he was walking into a glitter storm that would stain his skin, his clothes, and, with the help of my next step, his marriage. After lunch, I told him I had one more quick errand to run. Clara offered to come along, but I waved her off. Just picking up something small, I said. The electronics store was quiet. A young clerk named Mason helping me within minutes. I need a security camera, I told him. Small wireless with night vision. Something discreet. Got a lot of break-ins around here? He asked. Something like that. He showed me a palm-sized model, motion-activated, with magnetic mount and 8 hours of battery life. Perfect. I paid cash and left with my insurance policy in a box. Back home, I announced I was tired and heading upstairs for a rest. In my bedroom, I scanned the space for the ideal hiding place. On top of the bookshelf gave a bad angle. Behind the lamp was too obvious. Then I saw it. The perfect camouflage, nestled between a row of old hardcovers on my nightstand, angled to capture both the dresser and the center of the room. Through the app on my phone, I checked the feed. Clear as day. The motion sensor was sensitive enough to pick up Elias stepping inside, but not the creaks and sighs of the house. The night vision turned the room into sharp shades of silver, every detail crisp. Now the drawer held the bait. The camera would catch him reaching for it, and the glitter would do the rest. Elias believed he was planning the perfect crime. But tonight, the perfect crime would be mine. Dinner was quiet, almost too quiet. Clara chatted about a neighbor's new puppy, completely unaware that a storm was gathering under her own roof. Elias nodded along, but his phone stayed within reach, his thumb flicking across the screen between bites. I played my part, smiling, making small talk, feigning the fatigue of a man ready for an early night. By 8 o'clock, Clara curled up in the armchair with a novel. I rubbed my temples and said, "Long day. Think I'll turn in early." Elias looked up instantly. "Actually, Victor, I was hoping we could share a drink. You know, father-in-law, son-in-law bonding time." Clara didn't glance up from her book. "That's a nice idea. You two should talk more." His voice was casual, but the timing was too neat, the suggestion too rehearsed. "I was thinking about that bottle of aged Highland whiskey in your kitchen," he added, like it had just come to him. I kept my tone mild. "Appreciate it, but my medication doesn't mix with alcohol." He leaned forward slightly. "Come on, just one small glass. For a toast." "I really shouldn't," I said, my smile polite but firm. Clara backed me up. "He's right, Elias. The doctor said no alcohol." Elias tried to recover, forcing a laugh. "Well, maybe I'll just pour one for myself, and we can sit and talk." Minutes later, he returned with 2 glasses, one full, one with the barest splash. "Just a sip," he urged, holding it out. I declined again. His smile was strained now, a flicker of something harder in his eyes. He needed me out cold tonight, and I had just confirmed I wouldn't be. I stood, making a small show of swaying just slightly, as though fatigue had caught me off guard. "You know what?" I said. "I'm more tired than I thought. I'll take one of those sleeping pills and turn in early." Relief flickered across Elias's face. So quickly, he probably thought I hadn't noticed. "Good idea. You need your rest." Clara kissed my cheek. "Sweet dreams, Dad. See you in the morning." I climbed the stairs slowly, gripping the railing like an old man careful on his feet. At the top, I turned back. "Don't stay up too late, you two." "Elias, help yourself to anything in the kitchen." "Will do," he called back. In my room, I moved quietly, checking the camera feed on my phone. The angle was perfect. The dresser, the drawer, the bait. The glitter cannon sat primed like a coiled snake. I kept the lights off and lay fully clothed on top of the bed. The door left slightly ajar to match how he left it before. Downstairs, the TV murmured. Clara's footsteps climbed to the guest room, the door clicking shut. Elias remained below. Time crawled. The house seemed to hold its breath. At 2:43 a.m., I heard it. The careful groan of a stair that hadn't been stepped on in hours. Elias was coming, through the narrow gap in the doorway. I caught a glimpse of movement, a dark silhouette slipping into the hall. Elias moved like a man who had mapped every sound in the house. He avoided the groaning stair, placed his weight carefully on each board, pausing every few steps to listen. My breathing stayed slow and deep, the steady rhythm of someone deeply sedated. The door handle turned deliberate and slow. He slid inside, his frame just visible in the glow from the hallway nightlight. For half a minute, he stood perfectly still, watching me. Satisfied, he turned toward the dresser. His steps were confident now. He knew exactly which drawer to open. He slid it out smoothly, eyes locking on the key I'd planted in plain sight. His hand reached in. Boom! The sound was sharp, like a party favor amplified 100 times. A cloud of gold and silver glitter erupted into the air, catching the nightlight and coating him in a shimmering explosion. He stumbled back, swearing, the glitter clinging to his hair, his clothes, even his eyelashes. He looked like he'd been mugged by a Christmas ornament. I sat up with theatrical confusion, flicking on the lamp. What on earth? Elias froze, caught mid-crime, clutching the fake key like it was a crown jewels. "What are you doing in my bedroom at 3 a.m? I asked, my voice low and dangerous beneath the mass of confusion. He opened his mouth, but all that came out was glitter-filled air. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Clara appeared in the doorway, tying her robe, her face etched with worry. "Dad, are you?" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes sweeping the scene. Me sitting upright in bed, lamp blazing. Elias standing beside my open dresser drawer, drenched in gold and silver like some deranged holiday decoration. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. Elias stammered, I heard a noise. Thought someone might be breaking in." "At 3 a.m? I said evenly. "Into my dresser drawer? There was some kind of trap," he muttered, brushing futilely at the glitter clinging to his skin. Clara's gaze flicked to the open drawer, then back to me. "Dad, do you have security devices in your furniture?" "Not that I know of," I said, my tone just confused enough to sting. I was asleep until the explosion woke me. Elias's voice turned pleading. "Clara, I was just trying to help." "Help with what?" she cut in. Her eyes were narrowing, suspicion replacing confusion. "What exactly were you hoping to find in there?" He hesitated a second too long. "I thought maybe medicine." "You were tossing and turning." "In my father's dresser?" she demanded, her tone hardening. The glitter falling from his clothes looked almost like snow, settling on the carpet between us. Each fleck of gold and silver felt like a piece of evidence, shining under the light. It was the first time I'd ever seen Clara look at him like that, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Clara's arms crossed over her chest, her expression unyielding. "Elias, I want you to tell me the truth. Right now, why were you in here?" His voice cracked. "Clara, I swear." "Enough," I said gently, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. "Sweetheart, there's something you should hear." Elias's eyes widened, a flash of panic cutting through the glitter on his face. "Victor, don't what?" Clara's voice sliced through his protest. I tapped the screen, and his voice filled the room. Clear, cold, unmistakable. "Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. The old man's definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, serious money." Clara's head turned slowly toward him, disbelief bleeding into horror. The recording went on. "Tomorrow night's perfect. Clara's at her book club. Gives us all the time we need. I've already got the safe key." "Stop it." Elias barked, but Clara's hand shot up. "Shut up," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "My gambling debts aren't going away. Those guys aren't patient." Clara's mouth fell open. "Gambling debts," she whispered. I stopped the playback. Silence pressing around us. The only sound was a faint rustle of glitter falling from Elias's clothes onto my carpet. "Is it true?" Clara asked him, her voice breaking. "Were you going to rob my father?" His answer, or lack of one, would decide everything. Elias's mouth opened, but no words came. His glitter-coated hands flexed uselessly at his sides. "Answer me," Clara said, her voice low, steady and dangerous. He exhaled hard, shoulders sagging. "It's not what you think." "That recording sounded pretty clear," I said. Clara's eyes didn't leave him. "How much?" He hesitated, then muttered, 47,000. Her breath caught. $47,000? You've been lying to me for months. The job loss, the finances, why we had to stay here. Every bit of it was a lie. I was trying to protect you, he said, his voice slipping into that familiar, oily persuasion. By robbing my father, she snapped. By using me as cover while you emptied his safe? Elias stepped toward her, but she moved back like his touch might burn. You called him a lonely old fool, she said, her voice shaking with hurt. And you were going to disappear with me, like it was nothing. Something in her posture shifted then, like a steel rod running through her spine. Get out. What? His laugh was brittle. You heard me. Get your things and get out of my father's house. Now. For a moment, the only sound was the soft patter of glitter sliding from his clothes to floor, marking the trail of a man whose game was over. Elias's expression twisted, a mix of anger and disbelief. This isn't over, he said, his voice rising. Half of everything we own is mine. I'll get my share. Clara's laugh was sharp, humorless. Half of what? Debt? Because that's all you've given me, debt and betrayal. He tried to summon the swagger he'd worn when he first arrived at my door, but it fell apart under the weight of glitter, still clinging to his hair and the truth hanging in the air. I'll fight you in court, he threatened. With what money? Clara's tone was icy. You just admitted you owe nearly $50,000 to dangerous people. What exactly are you going to fight me with? Your gambling losses. His bravado cracked. He turned toward me, and for the first time, his glare held no pretense, just blame. This is your fault, old man. You turned her against me. No, Clara said firmly. You did that when you decided to rob my father instead of asking for help. When you lied to me over and over. He took a step toward her again. We're married, Clara. We took vows. You broke those vows the moment you planned a felony against my family. She shot back. I watched him realize in that moment that nothing he could say would work. No manipulation, no charm, no sweetened lie. Clara's voice was calm but unyielding. Get your things. Get out. Now. And this time, he didn't argue. Elias stood there for a moment longer, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. But whatever fight he had left drained away when he looked at Clara's face, set cold and done, without another word. He turned and walked out. We heard the guest room door slam, drawers yanked open, the chaotic rustle of clothes being stuffed into bags. A trail of glitter marked his path down the hall. Tiny flashes catching the light, as if the house itself was making sure we'd never forget. When he reappeared, 2 overstuffed bags hung from his shoulders. Clara didn't even glance at him. Leave your key on the kitchen counter, she said flatly. And don't contact me. My lawyer will handle everything. He hesitated, as though weighing one last remark, then must have decided against it. The front door opened, then slammed shut. The sound of his car starting, backing out, and fading into the distance left a silence that was almost shocking. For weeks, the house had carried his energy, tense, watchful, hungry. Now, it felt like it could exhale. Clara sank into the chair beside my bed, her shoulders slumping. Dad, I'm so sorry. I brought him here. I put you in danger. You couldn't have known, I said gently. If anything, I should have seen it sooner. Her eyes were wet, but there was something steadier in them now. Resolve. That glitter trap was genius, she said, managing the smallest smile. For the first time in weeks, I felt the same. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen windows like nothing bad had ever happened here. Clara was already at the table, a steaming mug in her hands. Sleep well? I asked. She nodded. Better than I have in weeks. We didn't talk much about Elias that day. Some things didn't need dissecting. Instead, we moved to the house together, reclaiming it in small ways, stripping the guest bed, tossing the sheets into the washer, vacuuming glitter out of the hallway carpet. No matter how much we cleaned, tiny flecks of gold and silver clung stubbornly to the fibers. And I found I didn't mind. Each sparkle was a reminder that we hadn't just endured his betrayal. We exposed it, stopped it, and sent it packing. Clara busied herself in the kitchen, cooking like she used to when she was a teenager. We ate lunch at the table, sunlight on our plates, laughter creeping back in between bites. For the first time in weeks, I didn't catch myself listening for his footsteps or watching the way he looked at my things. The tension that had crept into every room was gone, replaced by something lighter, peace. Later that evening, Clara stood at the sink, staring out at the garden. "I'm staying here for a while," she said softly, "until I figure things out." I smiled. "This will always be your home." The words seemed to settle something in her, like they'd been waiting all along. And just like that, the house felt whole again. Spring had settled over Brookford Heights, softening the edges of winter with budding trees and birdsong. The air carried that clean, green scent of things starting fresh. It had been 3 months and Elias walked out of our lives, trailing glitter and lies behind him. The divorce papers were signed, uncontested. Hard to fight over assets when the only thing you leave behind is debt. That morning, Clara came downstairs dressed for work, navy skirt, crisp white blouse, hair pinned neatly back. She'd landed a job at the local library 2 weeks after he left, and I'd watched her throw herself into it with a dedication that made me proud. "Morning, Dad," she said, pouring coffee. "Big day ahead, story time for the kids, then helping Mrs. Doyle with her genealogy project." "You sound happy," I said, and I meant it. She smiled. "I am. I didn't realize how much space he took up in my head until he was gone." We sat together over breakfast, and I noticed how light her laugh had become, how her shoulders no longer seemed to carry an invisible weight. Before she left, she paused in the doorway. "Thank you for everything, for protecting me, for handling it well with style." I chuckled. "Style? That's one way to describe a glitter bomb." Her laugh followed her out the door, the sound warm enough to fill the house even after she'd gone. And in that moment, I knew the worst was behind us. After Clara left for work, I stayed at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, the morning sun spilling across the worn wood. The house felt different now. Quiet, yes, but not empty. It was a quiet of peace, not secrecy. I thought back to the night Elias set foot in my bedroom, confident he was seconds from stealing my life savings. I could still see his stunned expression, frozen mid-crime as gold and silver rained over him. The glitter had been more than a trap. It was a truth revealed in the most undeniable way. You can explain away a missing key, a moved folder, even suspicious questions over dinner. But you can't explain standing in someone's private drawer at 3 a.m, shining like a disco ball. Word had gotten around the neighborhood. 2. Mrs. Hanley from across the street had asked if I could help her set up one of those sparkly alarms. I told her maybe it wasn't the glitter that mattered most. It was trusting your instincts, knowing when something doesn't feel right, and acting before it's too late. The truth is, justice doesn't always come from police reports or courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from paying attention, setting a careful snare, and letting a person's own choices close around them. And sometimes, if you're lucky, justice sparkles. I drained the last of my coffee, already hearing Clara's laugh in my head when I'd tell her that line later. Yes, the worst was behind us. The house was ours again. And the only thing left glittering in its halls were the memories of the night a predator walked in and walked out marked for all to see.